The Baltimore Ravens pick up an ever so important 37-26 win over the New England Patriots in week 3 of the 2022 season. We talk about that and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you on a Victory Monday. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for tuning in today, making us your first listen of the day here on Locked On Ravens. We're free and available on all platforms. That includes over on YouTube in video form. And we are back. The Ravens picking up a 37-26 win over the New England Patriots. And it was a big one, a big win for the Ravens. Definitely some ups and downs, some twists and turns throughout the game. We're going to get into all of that today here on the show, talking about Lamar Jackson and the offense. In the first segment, we're going to be getting into the Ravens defense in the second segment, and then talking about what is next in the Ravens upcoming matchup with the Buffalo Bills in week 4. So a ton to talk about here today. If you want to support the show, be sure to subscribe to this channel on YouTube, like the video, also follow along in audio form anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who's already subscribed and is already following along. We do put out daily Ravens content 5 days per week. So if you want that Ravens news analysis updates, we're here for you 5 days a week. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter at CashRocket34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. But let's dive into this content. The Ravens, again, score 37 points on this New England defense that came into the game ranked in the top 10 in both yards per carry allowed and yards per attempt allowed. So Baltimore was able to do some really nice things both through the air and also on the ground, and not just Lamar Jackson. We'll get to that in a second here. But let's start off with the man himself, Lamar Jackson, firmly the MVP through 3 weeks, or at least in the front runner to that MVP conversation, in my opinion. He cemented himself, definitely at least in that conversation on Sunday against New England. 18 of 29, 218 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, also 11 carries for 107 yards and a score. We saw a Jackson 5 here, folks. It was another really, really good performance. Efficient. Did have the 1 interception on a play where he kind of like tried to sidearm it past a defender a little bit, came up short to Rashad Bateman. But he's able to, again, be electric with both his arm and with his legs. And we are seeing this year Lamar Jackson that is so much more confident than we've seen in the pocket. And I don't think that's because, he wasn't confident in his abilities before. I think that's never been the issue. I think what it is he feels more comfortable behind an offensive line that, sure, is definitely struggled in some aspects, but I think is so much better than what we saw last year in certain aspects. And he is able to stand in the pocket, deliver these throws. Even if he has to move outside a little bit, he's able to make things happen where he waits and lets the play develop a little bit, lets receivers work back to him or work up the field. The Ravens, again, have been taking a lot of deep shots this year. And he's also, I think, been a little better at taking the short stuff this year, not forcing stuff a lot. But if there's a guy open 5 yards in the flat, take it. It's something that he's been a little better at this year, which I've been very impressed with from him. I know that when talking about what Jackson has done this year, I go back to the efficiency numbers because it truly is remarkable. Entering this game, he had a 10.2 touchdown percentage, which means he threw a touchdown on 10.2% of his throws. And in this game, again, he had 18 completions. 4 of those went for touchdowns. So just a tad under a fourth of his completions went for touchdowns in this game. He is doing this. He is putting up these numbers, not throwing the ball 50, 60 times. We saw Kyler Murray throw the ball 60 times, like 50 or 60 times on Sunday against the Los Angeles Rams. He didn't have a touchdown in the game. And I know because I have him in fantasy in a couple leagues. But I think for Jackson, it's been so impressive. And look, there were a ton of questions about how was he going to respond to Marquise Brown getting traded away, the Ravens going back to the bully ball type deal. Well, let's face it, The Ravens passing game has carried them through these first 3 weeks. Lamar Jackson's arm has carried them through the first 3 weeks. I had no doubts that it could, right? But I thought it was definitely going to be more of a run-heavy approach. Now, Baltimore for the first 2 weeks could absolutely not run the football outside of Lamar Jackson. The Ravens do, though, get a sliver of hope because Justice Hill has looked like their best back and the most explosive back through 3 weeks. In week 3, definitely did a lot in terms of conversations for maybe getting a little bit more carries for Justice Hill. Hill had 6 carries for 60 yards, including a 34-yard run where he looked like he got shot out of a cannon. I mean, he's somebody who had a couple rough years. Obviously was injured last season, got injured before the year started, hasn't really lived up to the billing coming out of Oklahoma State. And he's impressed. So me, at least so far, looked explosive in the preseason, looks explosive so far this year. Now the Ravens maybe a bit of a surprise to some. It was a surprise to me, to be honest, going with Mike Davis over Kenyon Drake. Now I think that with J.K. Dobbins active, another great storyline here in this one, Dobbins was active in this game. 7 carries for 23 yards, also contributed 2 catches for 17 yards. So not necessarily the gaudy stat line anybody wanted or anything, but what was really nice to see him with the football in his hands. But going back to Davis versus Drake, I thought Drake would have been the active one. I thought Davis just really didn't impress him. Like Davis didn't get a carry, really didn't even play in this game. But it's going to be interesting when Gus Edwards comes back. Who's the odd man out? Because I don't see Baltimore keeping 5 running backs on their active roster. Is Kenyon Drake the odd man out? Do they value Davis in pass protection, or do they value his skill set a little more over Kenyon Drake because Davis is a little different in terms of what he can do? I don't know, but I was very impressed with Justice Hill and obviously Jackson doing his thing. I mean, he is this Ravens team. He has been for a couple years now, and he's been so impressive. Receiving wise, Mark Andrews, we know Mark Andrews. We know he can do his thing. Friend of the show, Mark Andrews, 8 catches, 89 yards, and 2 scores. But you also have other contributors as well. Devin Duvernay cannot stop scoring touchdowns. He had 2 for 25 in a score. Rashad Bateman, 2 for 59. And can we talk a bit about that fumble, let's do air quotes, fumble that Rashad Bateman had? Did not look like he had possession to me. It looked like the ball was wobbling throughout the process of what they deemed a catch. I don't feel like it was a catch in my opinion. I know the Ravens do not as well, and I don't think Bateman does either. So I don't know what that process was. They looked at it and they still said it was a catch. I don't know what their process was there, but Bateman did have the fumble. Also had a deep ball that just glanced off of his fingertips. So there are a couple things you'd like to see out of Rashad Bateman, but did have 2 catches for 59 yards and we've seen explosive plays from Rashad Bateman. I mentioned J.K. Dobbins, Patrick Ricard, Josh Oliver, Isaiah Likely, Demarcus Robinson, each having either 1 or 2 or even no catches in this game. But I think when we're talking about the Ravens offense, look, I talked about that offensive line, right? The Ravens offensive line hit a bit of a rough patch early. And Patrick McCary has to get carted off the field with an ankle injury. And now John Harbaugh did say that it's a sprain and he'll be okay, but he didn't return in this game. He was ruled out. So where do the Ravens go? They have no Ronnie Stanley. It's Daniel Falele, the rookie 4th rounder who was a right tackle at Minnesota, had never played a snap at left tackle in college and was getting some work over there in practice, right? And throughout training camp, the preseason, whatever. But he's thrust into action. They have nobody else. If he gets injured, I'm probably going out there and playing left tackle, which I'll warn you would not have gone well. But I think he all things considered, he played well. Now the first couple plays for Falele were definitely a struggle. Got beat off the edge by Dietrich Wise on a couple plays where he was slow out of his sets, and Cole Jackson pointed this out. Does great work. Friend of the show, Cole Jackson. He was slow out of his sets, and we saw it where Dietrich Wise just shot out of a cannon on those snaps and was able to get around the edge really quickly, and Lamar Jackson really had no chance, and Wise was able to get a couple sacks in there. I mean, Wise on the day had 2 sacks on Falele, and I think he finished the day with 3. Yeah, he had 3 sacks. So it was Wise, and then Matthew Judon had a sack. So old friend Matt Judon. But I think all things considered, Baltimore's offensive line definitely bounced back. There are really positive things to take away from that offensive line. Is it a perfect unit? No. Is it at its full potential? No. Is there a bit of concern if Daniel Falele has to go up against Von Miller next week? Yeah, there's a little bit of concern there. but the Ravens were able to get him help. They were able to send guys there. There was that one play where J.K. Dobbins didn't help Falele on Wise, and he got around the edge for a sack. Like that, Dobbins should have helped his rookie left tackle there. But then Greg Roman found ways to get him help. And speaking of Greg Roman, I thought Greg Roman called a pretty good game for the most part. You know, he opened up the vault a little bit. We saw some creativity. The Ravens are averaging around 33 points a game, 34 points a game. And that's through the first 3 weeks. I mean, that's pretty solid. Is the offense perfect right now? No. But I think you have encouraging signs, and we're starting to see some creativity from Greg Roman, which I'm very encouraged by. So some stats before we head into our first break here, just overarching stats from this game. Baltimore on third down went 5 of 11. That is very good. No fourth down attempts in this game for the Ravens, so maybe a relief to some that didn't happen. But Baltimore ends up picking up 19 first downs. On the day, 394 total yards, did hold the ball for 30 minutes and 36 seconds. So they did win the time possession battle. New England only held it for 29 minutes and 24 seconds. Only 2 penalties in this game. Baltimore has been very good with penalties early on this year, especially the last 2 weeks. They've been very disciplined, which I've been very impressed by. So I think the offense, look, Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. He's going to do his thing, but he is, as much as he has done by himself and kind of said, I'm going to put the team on my back and do it myself, he has to have other guys making plays out there. We've seen it over the first couple of weeks with Bateman and Duvernay, who Duvernay has just been incredible, like absolutely incredible. Justice Hill making plays, Mark Andrews, we know, and the offensive line protecting for him. It all comes into one, and I think right now the Ravens offense, it is clicking on a lot of cylinders right now overall. Coming up here, though, on Locked On Ravens, we're going to be diving into the Ravens defense, some of the ups and downs they went throughout the course of the game. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We still have a ton to talk about here on the show. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about BetterHelp. And it can sometimes be tough to train your brain to stay in problem-solving mode when faced with a challenge in life. But when you learn how to find your own solutions, there's no better feeling. Therapists can help you become a better problem solver, make it easier to accomplish your goals no matter how big or how small. I've had times where I've been stuck focusing on problems instead of solutions, and it can be different with a different mindset. But sometimes there can be a bunch of reasons why someone could or should try therapy, and sometimes it can make you feel more like yourself, less stressed, more confident. Also, you can unload stress. There's emotional healing involved, and it can even help with anxiety and depression. And if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online, meaning you can get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey and then switch therapists at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. We're back here with our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. Thank you so much again for tuning in today, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. If you want to support the show, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. But let's talk defense. And it's it's an interesting conversation, right? Definitely some things that have to be improved upon. Baltimore got gashed in this game on multiple different occasions. Multiple. I mean, Devontae Parker, this was the Devontae Parker coming out party for him in this contest. Overall, he ended up catching 5 passes, 156 yards. You want a yards per catch on that is 31.2. At one point, he was averaging, I think, like 33 or 34 yards per catch. It was insane. It was really something else. The Ravens could not stop Devontae Parker. Now, we didn't score, and that's something we're going to get to in a couple minutes here, just how the Ravens were able to be opportunistic and take advantage when things seem to maybe be going off the rails a little bit. But there were some big plays that happened throughout the course of this game. The Ravens have struggled with big plays early in this season, especially over the last 2 weeks. New England totaled 447 total yards of offense, 7.1 yards per play. At one point, they were averaging like 8.2 yards per play early in the third quarter or something. The Ravens defense was able to double down and do some stuff later in the game that really helped out. But one key factor, and there are multiple, but one key factor I want to point out, the Ravens limited the Patriots to 2 of 9 on third down and 1 of 2 on fourth down. They've been a decent third down defense over the course of the first couple weeks here, which has been very encouraging. I know there were a lot of issues with third down defense last season and just getting off of the field. And that is key and goes into what I'm about to talk about now, which is the turnovers. Now, there were a lot of reasons why the Ravens defense might have been gassed a little bit, maybe at like the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter. Sometimes they had trouble getting off of the field. They're giving up some big chunk plays. But what can you do to combat that if you're a defense? Well, you can take the ball away and get off the field yourselves. And the Ravens did that. 4 turnovers in this game. A couple of stats turnover-wise for the Ravens. Through their first 3 games this season, the Ravens as a team have 8 turnovers. So 8 turnovers in 3 games. In 17 games last season, the Ravens had 15 turnovers. So 8 in 3 games, 15 in 17 games. I'm liking having over half the turnover total that they had all of last year in just 3 games this year. That, I think, is something that is impressive. You look at the interceptions. Baltimore intercepted Mac Jones 3 times in this one, and it goes up each week. In week 1, Baltimore had 1 interception. In week 2, it was 2. In week 3, it was 3. By week 18, they're going to have 17 interceptions, and it'll be glorious when that happens. But Baltimore, in terms of what they have this year, 6 interceptions in 3 games. In 2021, they had 9 in 17 in the whole year. So they're on a much better pace. The Ravens struggled with turnovers last year. That was apparent. They were tied for 29th in interceptions. I think 29th in turnovers as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's huge for a defense to be able to get off of the field. And Baltimore was getting these turnovers at very, very, very opportunistic times. You have the Marlon Humphrey interception in the end zone. You have Marcus Peters sealing the game off with an interception. And also, you talk about the what honestly I think might have been the biggest play of the game was Kyle Hamilton chasing down Nelson Aguilar and fruit punching the heck out of that ball and knocking it out. And Marcus Peters, with that ball, takes one more bounce and it's out of bounds. Marcus Peters was able to get on that football, keep it in bounds, and Baltimore turns what would have been a huge play for the Patriots into a turnover and getting off the field and giving the ball back to Lamar Jackson in that offense. It was massive because that is a swing. You know, you talk about swings all the time in sports, all the time in football, where one play can change momentum. And I think that was a play that changed the momentum back on the Ravens side in a game that really was going back and forth and back. I mean, the Ravens at the end of the first half, right? Terrible end of the first half for them. Gave up 43 yards in 30 seconds, allowed a 50-yard field goal to Nick Folk, and the Patriots were able to go within 1 heading into half. And exiting the halftime locker room, Baltimore gives up a really easy touchdown drive, a couple big plays in there. The Patriots are able to punch in the football. Those are the types of things where momentum shifts all the way to one side and all the way to the other side. And you have to find ways to combat that. And I think turnovers are a huge, huge way to do that. Also, you don't want your defense to be gashed or gassed. You know, you talk about being gashed and gassed. They almost go hand in hand in some aspects, because if you have an offense that's on the field, and we've talked about this before with Baltimore's offense back in the 2019 and 2020 days when they would take 9-10 minutes off the clock on one drive, the defense would be gassed. And because of that, they would be more susceptible to big plays, to big gashes. And when Baltimore is able to get off the field, get the ball back into the offense's hands, but 2, be able to rest a little bit, that is a huge thing that they were able to do. I think that Kyle Hamilton has definitely been, scrutinized a little bit over the first couple weeks of his NFL career. He's had some good moments, but also some miscommunications, and he took accountability last week after the miscommunications and said, he has to be better. And a lot of people liked that, myself included, but did say that it has to translate over to the field. And Hamilton, again, he's running up behind Nelson Aguilar, just punches the ball out. And it's incredible. If you haven't seen the play, I highly recommend you watch it, because it was really that good, where we saw the ball bounce not in the Ravens' favor so many times last season, where there would be a fumble out of bounds or a fumble bounces back to the offense and the opposing offense is able to recover, then they score. I mean, we saw it last week with Marcus Williams and his missed interception, which probably seals that game for the Ravens. And then what happens? Tua throws a touchdown on the very next play. And it's just the way it goes. The ball bounces the wrong way. One ball bounce can really do that to a team sometimes. But Marcus Peters made sure that bounce did not happen, and he was able to corral the football right on the sideline. Kind of reminded me of in 2020 when, who was it? It was Peters. Peters forced a fumble on Jonathan Taylor on the right sideline, and Chuck Clark picked it up on the sideline and ran it back, hurdled over Phillip Rivers for a touchdown. It was kind of the same thing, except obviously this wasn't returned for a touchdown. There were no hurdles involved, but it was like a momentum changing thing. We're in that Colts game. The Ravens weren't really able to get anything going early on offense or on defense. That was a play that honestly won them the game, and it happened early. This Hamilton fumble happened late, but it's the same premise where who knows what happens if Aguilar's able to get down and the Patriots are in Ravens territory deep in there. They're able to score a touchdown and change momentum back. So, there are multiple times where this defense could have fallen apart, and it didn't, and I give a lot of credit to them. But there were circumstances where, Mike McDonald, the play calling in some instances was a bit suspect again. We saw it in week 2. It happened again a little bit in week 3, especially at the end of the half. The way that drive was managed was not good. It flat out was not good. So there has to be improvement. McDonald's only in his 3rd week, right? This is not the Ravens have to fire Mike McDonald situation, but there has to be improvement and there has to be learning experiences for him early on. If he can't learn from these things and figure out, hey, this is what we do here, this is what we do there. It wasn't always going to be sunshine and rainbows for the Ravens early on. There are a lot of encouraging stats. I mentioned the turnovers that are there for the defense. But, you can't get gashed like this week in and week out and expect to win every single game. Sometimes Miami is a prime example of that. They got gashed to a pass for 459 yards, and the Ravens lost in heartbreaking fashion. The Ravens, they got a lot of turnovers in this game, and credit to them for doing that. But there has to be something where the Ravens can stop the run, and they have to be able to stop the big plays down the field as well. And also, I talked a bit about it last week, but there are these missed tackles that the Ravens have this year. And I'm not saying missed tackles are a huge, huge issue this year, but they have them. And it's like the opposing offense picks up like 7 extra yards or 8 extra yards. And it's those little missed tackles, the 5 extra yards, the 7 extra yards that can come back and haunt you as a team. Whether it's, the Dolphins are able to score a touchdown because Tyreek Hill picks up a first down, or the Patriots are able to get a field goal because there's a missed tackle here. I mean, Patrick Queen, who was it? Damian Harris, I think. Patrick Queen holds on to Damian Harris's shirt, and there's a thread 5 yards long of Damian Harris's shirt. And obviously he didn't make the tackle, but that was a crazy picture in itself. So yes, the defense definitely a mixed bag, up and down performance, but at the end of the day, they tightened up in the 4th quarter. They were able to force turnovers when they needed to, and that's big. They got the win because of their ability to force turnovers, and obviously the offensive catalyst was Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson and turnovers, the 2 big aspects in this game for the Ravens to pick up a win, and then obviously a bunch of little things contributing to that as well. Coming up here, though, in our final segment of Locked On Ravens, we're going to be diving into what comes next for this team, some injury updates, and more, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We're back here with our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. But now let's talk about what's next. Baltimore now stands at 2-1. They're tied for first in the division with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have the tiebreaker over Baltimore now, though, because of division record. They're 1-0 in the division, while Baltimore has not played a divisional game yet. So that's just how it goes. So Cleveland and Baltimore at the top. You have Pittsburgh and Cincinnati at the bottom, tied for third at 1-2. So we have a lot of season left. I think it comes down to divisional matchups when the Ravens are talking about potentially competing for the AFC North crown. I still think they win the division, but we will see. In terms of injuries, the Ravens, I mentioned Patrick McCary in the first segment. John Harbaugh did say that it's a sprain and that he'll be okay. So let's hope he's able to play in week 4 against the Buffalo Bills, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. But I think that, if he's not able to go, you trot out Daniel Faalele if Ronnie Stanley isn't able to go, and you hope Stanley is able to go, but maybe it's looking more like a week 5, week 6 game entry for him, debut for him. We'll see. But if Faalele has to go, he'll be up against a fearsome Buffalo pass rush that boasts, namely, Von Miller and a couple other really, really talented guys. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, the Ravens had 2 other injuries. Well, I guess 3 if you're counting Calais Campbell, who was able to return to the game. So seemingly no issues there. But Campbell's playing a lot of snaps this year. I would hope that he's able to kind of dial those back, but might have to pick up a bit of the slack because it seems like Michael Pierce might be done for a while. Now, nothing confirmed as of this recording yet, but when John Harbaugh was asked about the injury, He said, quote, "We'll have to see tomorrow. It's not definitive yet which way, what exactly in terms of seriousness. The decision will have to be made on that." So seems like that means if there is serious damage, it was Michael Pierce's arm, by the way, and Pierce had to get carted off the field with an arm injury. So definitely he must have been in a ton of pain, and maybe there's tendon damage or ligament damage or something where he'll have to make a decision on whether to opt for surgery or just play through the pain. And obviously surgery might mean season ending or months of missed time, and maybe playing through it only results in a couple weeks. So we'll see. But Pierce has been solid, and that would be a big loss for them, especially due to his run stuffing ability and his little bit of a pass rushing interior presence, which we've seen over the course of these first couple of weeks. And if he's unable to play, we'll have to see an uptick by guys like Calais Campbell and just Matabike, and even Travis Jones, who was active for the first time on Sunday against the Patriots, making his NFL debut. Then finally, Justin Houston. Yeah, hear me. You can tell me if you heard this one before about a Ravens outside linebacker getting injured. Justin Houston, John Harbaugh was asked about that as well, and said that he's got a strain, a soft muscle thing, and he said he doesn't know if it'll be a week or not, and he said we will see. So every week seems like Baltimore's losing another outside linebacker. Last week it was Stephen Means. This week it's Justin Houston. Now, doesn't seem like Houston's thing is anything necessarily super serious, but potentially could be a week or two out, depending on how serious the strain or whatever it is actually is. So the Ravens will hopefully make the deal with Jason Pierre-Paul official, hopefully today, and that will be set in stone. The Ravens obviously making that move late last week, but nothing was made official. So Brandon Copeland is called up from the practice squad. He gets a sack, and maybe he's going to be relied upon a lot more this year, just based off of the Ravens needing healthy bodies before Tyus Bowser was able to return. And Bowser coming back solves a ton of these issues, right? Like, obviously, just having him healthy is one thing. Like, getting a healthy player at the position is like, oh, great. Like, that's amazing. It sounds amazing. But the NFL has had a ton of injuries this year. Like, it seems like a lot more than usual. I don't know the stats behind it. I don't know if I'm right or not in saying that. But, yeah, the Ravens have definitely dealt with a lot so far, and they've lost some really talented depth, and they've had to replace it. And every time you sign a player, it goes against the salary cap, right? You don't save money by putting someone on injured reserve. So it's tough in those aspects where the Ravens are going to have to continuously, and hopefully they did it last year. Hopefully it's not this year they have to do it, but they have to continuously sign players and sign players and sign players. So yeah, that's something I don't want them to go through this year. But so far, it's like, I tweeted out that Incredibles thing where it's like, terminated. And the Ravens, it's not great because it's happening at positions of need. Like, they're not getting injured, and defensive line's an exception. They're deep at defensive line, but like they get hit at left tackle in this game where they only had one other option. It's a 4th-round rookie who hasn't played left tackle before. It's outside linebacker for 2 weeks after having Vince Beagle suffer the Achilles in training camp, and then Stephen Means, and now Justin Houston with whatever he's dealing with. So the Ravens are going to need some of their other depth to step up. We've seen some cornerback injuries throughout the course of the year so far. There have been some stuff with the wide receivers a little bit early on. So injuries are a big part of the game. It is football after all, but man, this doesn't make it any easier when you're talking about the Ravens and just what they've gone through this year. Week 4, though, the Ravens will wrap up their AFC East tour and play the Buffalo Bills. This is a game that I have no idea how this is not a primetime game, but here we are, where the Ravens will play the Buffalo Bills at 1 p.m. at M&T Bank Stadium. Josh Allen coming to town, facing off against Lamar Jackson for the first time since that 2019 season where he broke the ankles of Matt Milano, the Bills linebacker. That was a play. That'll be something that surfaces on Twitter this week. And it's a game that Marcus Peters had the game-winning pass breakup on John Brown, Ravens legend John Brown, by the way. But the Bills and the Ravens have changed a lot since then. Buffalo, one of the most feared teams in this league, one of the best teams in this league, and look, rightfully so. They have talent on offense, talent on defense, even talent on special teams like the Ravens do. This is going to be a good game. I think that this is a game that a lot of people probably have Baltimore losing. We're going to see what the injury situation is like throughout the week here and just who's available for each side. But I think that it should be a competitive game, a good game. I mean, a game with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in it, it's going to be electric anyway, right? Like 2 electric quarterbacks, 2 guys in the MVP conversation right now. It's going to be a good game, and I'm excited for it. And it's a big test. It's the Ravens' biggest test of the year. They're going to have to be able to stop Stephon Diggs and be able to quell Von Miller as a pass rusher and really have answers. Now, the Buffalo secondary definitely beat up right now, so we'll see who ends up playing this week versus not. Micah Hyde's out for the year with a neck injury, so that's a big blow to Buffalo secondary, but we will see. It's going to be a really exciting game, but the big news of Sunday, Baltimore picking up that 37-26 win over the New England Patriots in Week 3, taking down Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, and that New England squad. But that's all I have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, continuing to talk about the Ravens Week 3 win over the New England Patriots. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.